Okay, let's start with one of the biggest questions out there, really.
Yeah,
Where does consciousness actually live? In the body, I mean.
it's a huge one. And yeah, for centuries, philosophers, scientists, they've all been grappling with it.
And I think for most people, you ask that and the answer just pops out. The brain.
Right.
That's the default.
Absolutely. That's been the standard thinking. Consciousness equals brain activity, specifically those thalamocortical networks everyone talks about.
But what if that's not the whole story?
Yeah.
What if we told you there are some, well, pretty surprising things happening in biology that challenge that neat picture?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at consciousness in a bunch of different life forms and ask, what does this tell us about where it's embodied? It might be way beyond just our gray matter.
Yeah, we've got some fascinating examples lined up. We're talking headless chickens. Seriously.
Oh, yeah. And jellyfish, octopuses with their amazing arms, even flatworms that regenerate.
And wood frogs, the ones that freeze solid. It's going to really stretch how you think about consciousness, where it is, and maybe even what it is.
So let's dive in. Where do we start? Maybe with the idea that you don't even need a full brain.
Yes, perfect. The whole concept of extra-cerebral consciousness. So consciousness outside the brain. And the classic, almost unbelievable example is Mike the Headless Chicken.
Mike. Yeah, he's famous in certain circles, this rooster. His head was mostly severed, but a bit of the brainstem remained.
And he lived for 18 months, which is just mind-boggling.
It really is. And the key thing wasn't just that he was alive, like twitching. He showed behaviors. Reflexive, yes, but also survival-related things.
So it suggests some kind of basic awareness, or at least responsiveness, right?
Yeah.
Even without the main brain parts, the cerebrum.
Precisely. It makes you question if the cerebrum is the absolute must-have for any form of consciousness, or if maybe it's more of a gradient, a spectrum, not just on or off.
Okay, that's pretty wild already. But Mike's just one case. What about creatures that, never had a centralized brain to begin with? Jellyfish, for instance.
Good example. Jellyfish don't have a brain. They have nerve nets distributed throughout their body.
Potentialized, yeah.
Right. But they still move in coordinated ways. They hunt, they react to things. It's coordinated response without a central processor.
And octopuses, they do have a central brain, but don't they have a lot of neurons, out in their arms?
They absolutely do. A huge proportion, actually. Each arm can act semi-independently, exploring, reacting. It really fuels ideas about embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition,
Yeah.
meaning the mind isn't just locked in the skull.
Exactly. It's the brain, the body, the environment, all interacting dynamically. The octopus arms are a fantastic example. Consciousness, or at least some aspects of awareness and control, seem distributed.
So these examples, jellyfish, octopuses, they strongly suggest that consciousness, or its foundations anyway, might not need one single spot.
It certainly pushes back against a purely brain-centric view.
Okay, but let's be clear. We're not saying the brain doesn't matter,
Yeah.
especially for the kind of complex consciousness we experience.
Oh, absolutely not. The brain is incredibly important. And that brings us to intracerebral consciousness, the kind inside the brain. Our sources really dig into this too.
Yeah, so what are the key brain parts involved there? The thalamus often comes up, right?
Definitely. The thalamus, those two sort of egg-shaped structures deep inside, think of them as a master relay station.
Relaying what? Sensory stuff?
Pretty much all of it. What you see, hear, feel, it gets processed and relayed by the thalamus up to the cerebral cortex, the outer layer involved in higher thought.
And damage there to the thalamus or its connections, that's serious for consciousness.
Extremely serious. It's consistently linked to profound loss of consciousness, vegetative states. Those connections seem critical.
And there are theories about how the brain creates consciousness internally, right? Like
Yeah.
information being shared globally.
Yes, exactly. You have things like the global workspace theory. The idea is that information becomes conscious when it's sort of broadcast across many brain areas, made globally available, like it's up on a stage for everyone to see.
Okay. And integrated information theory, IIT, that's another big one.
Right. IIT focuses on the brain's ability to integrate vast amounts of information into a single unified experience. It measures consciousness by how much information a system integrates, essentially.
So both theories emphasize the interconnectedness, the dynamic sharing of information within the brain. Complexity and coherence seem key.
Absolutely. So while we're looking at these other fascinating examples, we can't discount the powerful evidence for the brain's central role, especially for complex human-like consciousness.
Okay, that makes sense. Brain is vital, but maybe not the only place something like awareness can happen. Which brings us to the next really mind-bending idea, regenerative awareness.
The planarian flatworms, these are
You
amazing.
can cut them up, right?
Oh.
And they just grow back.
They do. You can cut them in half, even into smaller pieces, and they regenerate into complete worms. Head, brain, everything.
But here's the kicker. Some studies suggest they can remember things they learned before being decapitated, even after growing a whole new head.
It's incredible, isn't it? It poses a fundamental question. If the brain structure was destroyed and regenerated, how is the memory, the learned behavior, retained? Where was it stored?
So it wasn't just in the brain cells that got regrown.
It seems not entirely. It suggests memory, maybe even elements of awareness, could be distributed elsewhere in the body, maybe encoded in other tissues, perhaps even at a cellular level somehow.
Like a modular consciousness, distributed functions.
Possibly. It implies consciousness or its components might not be tied to fixed anatomical locations. There might be plasticity, redundancy, the ability to reconstitute awareness.
It really makes you wonder about the physical basis. If it can be rebuilt, maybe retaining information, what does that mean for consciousness being located anywhere specific?
Exactly. It suggests where might be a less static concept than we thought.
Okay, from regeneration to suspension. This next one is dormant consciousness. And the example here is the wood frog.
The wood frog is extraordinary. These frogs live in very cold regions.
And they literally freeze solid in winter, don't they?
They do. Their heart stops, breathing stops, brain activity essentially ceases. Clinically, they'd be considered dead.
But then spring comes, they thaw out.
And they just revive. They hop away as if nothing happened. Fully conscious, fully active.
How is that even possible? Consciousness just paused.
It seems so. It raises profound questions about what consciousness is. Can it persist somehow even when all biological activity is suspended? Is the self preserved?
So consciousness isn't necessarily tied to active, ongoing biological processes.
It appears it can be decoupled, at least temporarily. It suggests consciousness might be a potential state embedded in the organism's structure, ready to reemerge when conditions allow.
A latent capacity waiting to be reactivated.
Precisely. It's not necessarily a constant flame. Maybe it's something that can be reignited based on physical and biochemical states.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and pull this together. We've gone from Mike the Headless Chicken, showing basic responsiveness,
To jellyfish with their nerve nets, octopuses with smart arms,
flatworms regenerating memories after decapitation.
and wood frogs freezing their consciousness and bringing it back online.
It really feels like the more we look, the less consciousness fits into that simple, it's all in the brain box.
Absolutely. This journey through these different examples, I think it strongly suggests consciousness isn't in one single seat.
So it's more like an emergent property, something that arises from complex interactions.
That seems a much better way to describe it. Interactions between, yes, neural structures, but also the whole body, the environment, maybe even these regenerative or dormant potentials we talked about.
So we need to expand our view beyond just the cortex. We need models that account for distributed awareness, embodied experiences.
Regenerative possibilities, latent states. The classical view just feels too narrow now.
And hopefully, exploring this wider biological spectrum helps you, the listener, get a deeper sense of what consciousness might really be.
It shows it's not this fixed thing stuck in one type of tissue. It seems much more multifaceted, dynamic, adaptable, almost woven into life itself in surprising ways.
Yeah. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If consciousness is so adaptable, so widespread, maybe even capable of regeneration or dormancy,
Yeah.
what does that really tell us about the nature of life itself?
Something definitely worth pondering.